In today's video, we're taking a look at the possibility of Patrick Kane maybe heading to the Bruins by the deadline. Could Boston be a player for his services? Could we see a trade involving the Ottawa Senators, possibly with either Montreal, maybe even San Jose? There's a major scouting session going on between the Sens and those teams here as of late. We have the RFA deadline coming up. We have a big vote coming in Tempe regarding the Arizona's Coyotes situation, and we have a big signing in Dallas and some other news as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Of course, as you can see, once again, coming to you from Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. Of course, you get to look at Mickey Mouse here tonight. Last night you had a view of Pluto, so certainly trying to change things up a little bit with what you see here in the background. As I mentioned, I'm not sure if we're going to do any videos outside in the public area or not. We'll kind of take that here on the whim and see how things go. But in today's news, we have a variety of things to talk about. Some more news from the NHL waiver wire. The Chicago Blackhawks have placed a player on waivers for the purpose of a contract termination. So that's unconditional waivers. That's Jacob Poor is his name. Probably not a player that many of you are familiar with. A player in the Blackhawks system who came over from the Czech Republic, and he's mostly only played in the East Coast and American Hockey Leagues. Obviously not getting the opportunity he thought he would be able to attain at the higher level, and probably mutually decided to terminate this contract. He can probably get more of an opportunity to go over and play over in Europe. So certainly I expect him to clear, and that contract should be terminated here as of tomorrow. Of course, we saw this recently as well with the Sabres and Riley Shea just in the past couple days. Some other roster moves here. The LA Kings have sent back forward Lias Andersson. He was recently called up, but has already been sent back down, and they've recalled Samuel Fagemo, as well as prospect defenseman Jordan Spence. So we'll look for them to hopefully get some in-game action here in the coming days. We also saw some other roster moves as well, including the Vancouver Canucks demoting a couple of their top young players, including defenseman Jack Rathbone and forward Vasily Podkolzin, of course the former first rounder, not having a great start to the season. He's appeared in 16 games, has yet to score a goal. He does have a few assists and hasn't been playing on a consistent basis. Obviously at this point makes more sense for him to get more of a chance to play in Abbotsford in the American Hockey League. And the Boston Bruins, after clearing waivers, defenseman Anton Strawman has been officially reassigned and demoted to the American Hockey League affiliate as well. We'll see. I'm not sure if he's actually going to go and play, if that's more of a paper transaction. We've seen that with the Leafs a few times recently, where Wayne Simmons was put through waivers and cleared and technically reassigned, except they haven't actually got him to go down and practice or play with the Marlies. He's been basically hanging around the NHL team. He's just showing on the American Hockey League roster. So we'll see what the Bruins do. Of course, like I mentioned yesterday, Derek Forwart's expected to return shortly, and they had to do this move to make the space. But there's also additional space that's going to be needed here, and there's still some thought that we could see a trade involving either a guy like Mike Riley, also held up in the minors in the Bruins system after kind of losing his spot there after players started getting healthy and players coming back from injury. Could even be a guy like Craig Smith. We expect something to happen in Boston to create a little bit of additional space here this week. So we'll have to watch them. I'm not sure exactly which way they're going to go. Probably depends on what other teams are willing to do here with them. Now, as I mentioned as well, we had a pretty substantial signing earlier today. The Dallas Stars have locked up one of their top young players in Hintz. Long term here will be one of their key core guys moving forward. He's been a key part of the team already, but given his young age, certainly you still see guys like Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Pavelski, kind of the leaders, so to speak, of that group, the veterans. And eventually this team is going to be handed over, and you're going to see a younger core kind of take over the reins from those older players like Heiskanen, of course, is in that mix, and Jason Robertson and Roope Hintz. Of course, Robertson, I think that's going to be a whopper of a contract. I think Dallas is probably not overly thrilled they weren't able to do a long-term deal with him, but a lot of that was due to cap. That was the big issue with them. They were kind of tied to keeping the contract similar to where they got him signed at, it just means that for him, the fact that he started off on another tear here, taking it up another level, he's just really going to cash in on his next one. So the contract for Rupe Hintz essentially is identical to teammate and defenseman Miro Heiskanen. Now that deal is a little bit older now, but it's still in the very early stages, given he was signed with 1 year to go with being an RFA. So obviously in this case he buys 1 year of RFA with arbitration rights of Rupe Hintz and 7 unrestricted years for an 8-year total contract at $8.45 million per season, structured the same as Heiskanen. There's some signing bonuses in there, and there is a no-move clause later in the deal once he's eligible for that. So certainly a player that they're going to spend a ton of money on, but if you look back over how he's progressed in the last couple of years, he's averaging out to be about a point per game player, close to a 40 goal scorer. This guy is going to continue to, he hasn't peaked yet. He's still going to continue to get better, in my opinion. So Dallas, I think longer term with guys like Heiskanen on a longer term deal, they got Ottinger signed for a few more years. That's going to obviously be a little bit pricier the next time around if he keeps improving. Robertson contract's going to be a whopper. They got Hintz. This is your next guys taking over, and they've really got, they've done well. They've got some long term key pieces locked up. I know at first glance it seems like a lot of money for Hintz. My first thought was, wow, if you get that kind of money, I can imagine what they're going to pay Robertson on the next one. But looking at the comparables, looking at the stats and how he's improved, and the fact that he likely hasn't peaked yet, I honestly don't think it's a problem. I think as the cap rises the next few years, by the time we get to the second, third year, especially maybe even sooner than that, this is going to look like a very, very solid contract, possibly team friendly. I just think that the sky's the limit for this guy with what he can achieve here. So great signing by Jim Nill and the Dallas Stars. Now, one other key piece of news here, as well as the deadline for restricted free agents to sign, is coming up, and it's fast approaching. December the 1st at 5 o'clock Eastern time. Not far away, a couple days here, and they're still very, very quiet around the lone remaining unsigned RFA, and that's Senators forward Alex Formenton. Now, a couple things are seeming more and more likely here as we go. There's really only 3 potential outcomes. Either A, they agree to terms and he signs. Doesn't seem likely. B, they trade him, because there's been some talk he could be involved as a piece that we know they want to add on the blue line. There's no secret. Pierre Dorian's been trying to do that since the offseason, has yet to find a good solid D to make an upgrade on that seems reasonable to work for the price that teams want from the Senators to make that acquisition. So could Formenton be a part of that? Absolutely. It seems like his time with the team pretty much appears over, the fact that he remains unsigned. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that think the team must know something, and I'm not, I can't say that they do or they don't, but obviously that 2018 World Junior team that's been under investigation, I don't understand personally what's taking so long. I mean, this is a previously known police case that was investigated by police, so they already had something to start on, to base things on, to get things going. It's not like they had to start from complete scratch here. Of course, the NHL's been investigating on their own, as well as what's going on with London police for quite a few months now. It's really unclear where things stand. There really hasn't been any updates on where that's at. I know a lot of people are convinced, though, that Formenton must be involved, and somehow they know that he's going to be in trouble and they don't want to sign him. And maybe that proves right, but we have absolutely no reason, based on any facts at least, to say that that's the case. But like I said, I understand the speculation, and I don't... I can't prove it, of course, but it could make sense. So longer term, we'll see how this plays out. But the more likely scenario is that he goes to Europe. I mean, at the same time, Bruce Garriock of the Ottawa Sun and TSN is reporting that essentially the Sens have made an offer, and it's up to him. It's in his court. But the rumor is that it's like a short-term deal, not far off, or either at or just slightly above league minimum. And there's no way Formenton is going to sign for that kind of money based on what he's done before, but based on what they've acquired for other forwards in the offseason, he's never going to get above third-line status. And really, essentially, they signed Tyler Mott late in the offseason to be his replacement. Doesn't mean that Mott will be there long term either, but it's just complicated. I don't really see a spot where Formenton will be a legit top 6 guy with the Sens, at least not with DeBrincat and Giroux being in the mix. So it really pushed him down the lineup and prevented him from moving up. So there could be other legit negotiations going on here that are impacting things. So we'll see, but we'll know for sure in a couple of days if he's going to play with Ottawa at all this year. But most are convinced that he likely goes to Europe. But we'll find out in due course here. Now, it's a big night in Tempe, Arizona. The Arizona Coyotes, of course, are in the process of wanting to build a new arena there, as we know, playing at ASU. They've got an agreement in place to do that for a few years. Gary Bettman and Bill Daly are both in town for this. So the city council tonight is expecting to vote on this project. Now, it's not going to be a done deal, yes or no, regardless of where things go. But essentially, actually, I should say, if it is a no vote, I believe the project does not move forward, but I'm not expecting that based on what we've seen and heard. I think there's enough support for it to move forward, but the next step is if they get a yes vote tonight, then it has to go to a public debate, and then they're going to have a chance to vote on it, and that's going to be around May the 16th, I believe it is, that the locals can vote on it in a referendum type of vote. So obviously it'll be up to them. So we'll see where things go, but we should have some pretty big updates on that soon as later this evening. So it'll probably be something that we talk about in tomorrow's video. And then Chris Johnson is also reporting that of course, we know the Ottawa Senators are for sale, and there's all kinds of big names out there. Some are billionaires, some are celebrities, all kinds of names that we all have heard of and are familiar with in various aspects of sports, Hollywood, entertainment, and other aspects, like I said, just from being rich and famous, essentially, that are wanting to be involved here. It's believed, based on Johnson's reports, that the bidders are going to have an opportunity to check out the financials and see the books for that franchise sometime in the next week. So it'll give them a better, inside view of where things stand. Of course, they'll have to know a lot of these things, and it'll impact their decisions. Do they want to continue with their bid? Will it impact what the amount is they bid, and all those types of things? So we'll see where things go, but we should see some more bigger updates on that project as well here in the coming days. Like I said, it's likely going to get into January is when we're hoping to see a spot based on reports that we should have a better idea who the winning bidder is going to be, and they can start the process of trying to close the deal so that they have the rest of the year to work on the arena project, because that has to be taking some big steps between now and next fall. So it makes sense that they want to get this done ASAP so they have time for the new owner to be involved with many of those steps that are going to be required, since they're going to be putting a lot of their own funds and time and resources involved in funding that project. Now, on to some trade talk here for today. The Ottawa Senators have a major scouting team watching the Sharks and Habs tonight. Now, there's some people debating why would this be. They actually have like 5 team reps from the Senators watching this game. I know Eric Engels of Sportsnet had joked on Twitter earlier saying that obviously he thought that the Sens were quite familiar with Erik Karlsson. We know Erik Karlsson's been in the trade rumor mill from San Jose, and a lot of talk about the Sharks would be willing to move him. I think it's going to be a long, complicated deal. If he does get traded, it's going to be some time, and it's not going to happen here all that quickly. At least I wouldn't think this, given what he makes for money, no move clause. There could be a third team involved. Like it's not easy, and it's really hard to say how quickly something like that could come together. And are the Sens familiar with them? Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, you got to say that they, would want to see him up close and personal a number of times to see where things are at today. Because yes, he's putting up all these numbers, but sometimes seeing is believing, and that could be. But are the Habs and Senators maybe in talks? Could there be a player that they're watching on the Montreal Canadiens that there seems possible that they would be interested in? And that's the part that seems intriguing, because we know the Habs have an abundance of forwards, and that they've been wanting to shed one or two of those to lower their salary obligations, to help with their salary cap situation, free up some contracts, roster space, all those things. I just don't see how the Senators would really be interested in any of those players. They have a lot of their own forwards. They don't really have a ton of injuries. They have Josh Norris that's out. Otherwise, they're in pretty good shape health-wise, and they're not going to make a short-term deal, I don't think, to try to replace this guy. So to me, it doesn't make sense that they'd be looking at some of those Habs forwards. At least I wouldn't think. Looking at their blue line, I don't think it makes sense that any of their defensemen that they really could be looking at would make sense either. Ideally, the Senators, if they're going to find a D, they need somebody who can play the right side in the top 4. Ideally, an upgrade on Travis Hamonic would be great, so that you can have a combination of Sanderson and Chabot on the left, with some kind of combination of Zub and this, other mystery defenseman that they're searching for on the right. Push Hamonic down, maybe to play with Eric Brandstrom, and then you get maybe Nick Holden comes out of the lineup more regularly. Of course, Zaitsev's already been pushed down and into the minors, so that kind of makes the D-core overall a lot stronger. So are the Sens watching the Habs, or are they really there to see that top defenseman on the San Jose Sharks, so they're also familiar with? I'm not sure, but it would make sense. I know Sens fans from a nostalgia perspective probably love to see that, but extremely complicated financially, given the other obligations they've already committed to, other obligations they seem like they want to commit to. I don't know how likely and difficult that would be. It would be. I don't think Ottawa fans should be getting excited thinking it's going to happen, but maybe they are scouting EK65. We'll see. I don't know. Either way, something's brewing. They wouldn't have 5 reps on one game if there wasn't something they were keenly interested in, right? And the other thing I want to talk about today is Patrick Kane in Chicago. We've talked a lot about where he could end up. One team that hasn't been mentioned but was highly debated on a recent podcast here is the Boston Bruins. Now, this was brought up by Ryan Whitney, of course, former NHL player on Spit and Chicklets. I don't normally listen to that podcast a whole lot, but I did listen to a few clips just to get their perspective on things. And, obviously Whitney being a Boston guy, I know if there's a team that he would know more about, especially from an inside perspective, it probably would be them. Now, he's not talking publicly saying that he has sources saying that they're interested or anything like that, but he says that, and it makes sense, that right now the Bruins are the top team, or one of the top couple teams in the NHL. If there's ever been a year that they would be all in trying to make a big move, it would be this year. It's fair to say with Bergeron and Krejci on 1-year deals, they got to extend Pasternak. To me, this is almost like a version of The Last Dance if you want to go look at the Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls documentary. Kind of the same sort of scenario in a sense that the band's back together, they're trying to win, they're off to a phenomenal start. I would suspect that management there is going to give them every opportunity to succeed and try to win one last cup with this core group of guys before they want to go into retirement. It's just that simple, and Patrick Kane could be an absolutely huge part of that. So we do know that Kane obviously will have all the power, all the leverage here. I know Mark Lazarus of The Athletic, who covers the Hawks, has most recently, when he's talked about Kane, said that he still feels that his heart's in Chicago. He still feels that there's a chance he stays, but he also feels that the losses are piling up. It's getting to him, and that as we get later in the year, there's a really, really good chance he feels that his mind will be kind of switched, and he'll accept a deal to go somewhere else and try to chase playoffs in the Stanley Cup. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, he's got all the power here. He's got the no move. So we don't know. But, listening to that podcast, Whitney made some great points on why the Bruins would go after a player like this. Now, of course, he did admit it'd be extremely complicated from a, what you're going to give up for assets perspective, cap perspective, all that kind of stuff. Not easy by any means. His counterpart on the podcast, RA, also talked about it and said he didn't think there was any chance Kane would go to the Bruins. So it was a difference of opinion there. So I just thought it was very interesting and intriguing to even consider that trade possibility of Kane to the Bruins. If you think about what that top 6 would be like with what they have now, and you throw Kane in the mix, that would be an incredibly sick top 6 that I don't know that many teams could really handle. They're having a hard enough time with Boston now with only a handful of losses on the season. You can count on one hand the teams that can beat them in a regular season game so far this year. You throw Patrick Kane in the mix, that's pretty lethal. They've got a solid blue line. They're getting great goaltending out of Allmark and Swayman. This, forward group is showing to be pretty deep. A lot of guys are bouncing back. Obviously Pasternak's still chugging along. Marchand's came back from injuries, playing really well. Bergeron's doing well. Krejci's back after a year away playing in Europe. He's doing really well. Jake DeBrusk's bounced back. Taylor Hall's contributing. Even Nick Foligno's doing better. It just seems like, your ideal storyline of all these guys that are either near the end of contracts or near the end of their careers kind of pulling together for one last run, and it makes sense that they'll go all in. If it's not Kane, it's going to be somebody else. I have no doubt that Sweeney and Neely and the Bruins are going to do their best to land a big fish here at the deadline and really push this team over the top to go for a cup. I have no doubt they're going to try it. Will they be successful? Will it be Kane? Time will tell. I don't know. Want to know what you think about that possibility. Does it make sense that he would be their target? Do you think they could do the deal from a trade asset perspective? Cap perspective would be very tough, but I wouldn't say it's impossible with the Hawks retaining half of that contract. maybe even getting a third team involved to do the another part to make that even lower. Yes, it's an extra asset on Boston's side, but do they care when they're trying to give this group a chance to win? So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.